Hello, my name is Justin McClure, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're doing an important director. A message director, if you will. Stanley Kramer.
You know, Alfred Hitchcock once said that if I have a message to deliver with my film, I would rather just go to Western Union.
Oh!
Well, Stanley Kramer is a man for whom Western Union was his production office. That's right. We're talking about a man who tackled interracial marriage with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, race relations with The Defiant Ones, nuclear war with On the Beach,
greed with It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World.
I guess so, sure.
He said that himself.
The Holocaust with Judgment at Nuremberg, the Scopes monkey trial, and the division between church and state with Inherit the Wind. And as a producer, famously tackled juvenile delinquency with The Wild One, and
famously,
and the scourge of piano playing with the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T.
Stanley Kramer is no one's favorite director, but there's a good chance that a lot of people saw one of his movies, either forced upon them in a school classroom, or they stumbled upon it on a Sunday afternoon on television.
This is something I was thinking about while watching these movies this week, because all of these movies, well, not all these movies, he's made, I want to say 7 movies that are very famous. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows them. People refer to them even in casual conversation. People bring up Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah, the classic Ashton Kutcher film.
Yeah. Who watches these movies?
No one.
No one watches The Defiant Ones.
No, I don't think so.
No one watches Judgment at Nuremberg.
Nope. Why watch The Defiant Ones when you could watch Fled, the remake of The Defiant Ones?
Of course. Why watch It's a Mad, 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 Mad World when you can watch Rat Race?
Yep. I was waiting for that to come up.
Even so, this is a man whose films as a producer and director earned 85 Academy Award nominations.
The thing about Stanley Kramer is, like, he's a message director. He's what people would say is like Oscar Beatty big message movies, but he made all these movies independently in a system that did not want him to make these pictures.
Yeah, a real Otto Preminger type.
Yeah, like he was forcing his way through and making, by the end of his career, these mega productions. When he started, he actually just wanted to make little kind of controversial films that dealt with subjects that he thought were important.
And by the way, he was the only director tackling these issues. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, he actually had gigantic financial successes off these movies. Like, these movies were, some of them at least, were very popular in their day.
But if they were such controversial subjects, how were they so popular, Will?
Well, because...
middlebrow.
Yeah, you know, he's a very liberal director, platitudinous, I guess.
Over-emphasis, self-righteousness, lame. I wrote all these adjectives in my notes.
But I wanted to tackle Stanley Kramer on this episode because I like a lot of, I guess, cinephiles, I have a knee-jerk reaction to Stanley Kramer, which is white elephant art, you know, pedestrian filmmaker.
Cinéma du papa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I wanted to immerse myself to the extent that I could this week. You know,
you watched way more than I thought you were going to.
I watched 4 of his films this week.
And all the big ones are long. Judgment at Nuremberg, 3 hours. It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that.
In its roadshow version, which we both experienced this week.
Carefully reconstructed by the Criterion Collection.
And, you know, there came a moment on Sunday night when I had a little time before bed, and I thought, I'd really like to watch a movie. I'd like to watch something I'd like to watch. No, I should watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So I did that because I wanted to like get a handle on this man. I wanted to be fair to him. You know?
I mean, Stanley Kramer is that filmmaker on the AFI Top 100 that when you get to his films, you're like, I guess I'll watch this.
Nobody wants to watch it.
Nobody wants to watch it.
But I will say that after this week, I come away with a more nuanced take on Stanley Kramer. Mm-hmm. He'll never be a favorite director.
No.
But he has made some movies that I think are pretty good.
Well, I was already on the record that Judgment at Nuremberg is a great movie.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie for a couple of different reasons, whether it's this like weighty material, the great performances, or even the way that it's shot, which, you know, a lot of Stanley Kramer movies, like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, is just kind of there.
Static.
Yeah. It's not fancy. It's almost rushed, and there's no artistry behind it.
This also caught me off guard about Judgment at Nuremberg. This movie, by the way, is his 1961 film, a dramatization of the Nuremberg trials, over 3 hours long. It goes back and forth between scenes in the court, which I think a lot of them are based on actual transcripts of the trial, and scenes of the head judge, Spencer Tracy, wandering around devastated post-war Berlin.
Yeah, letting American audiences know that Germany shouldn't get off that easy, right? That's the message of the movie at the end.
It's a somewhat complicated movie. So first of all, the first thing that caught me off guard about it was the fact that it is like a really good-looking movie. Mm-hmm. And since fully half the movie takes place in this one courtroom, I think Stanley Kramer keeps coming up with interesting ways, like ways to keep it visually interesting.
There's a brilliant move right at the beginning where Stanley Kramer makes a decision that, like it would have probably happened in real life, the German people being prosecuted don't speak English, so they need translators simultaneously throughout. Mm-hmm. And in the Hunt for Red October style, with one quick zoom in on a character, it like breaks the barrier of, these people are speaking German, but now we're switching to English just to let the audience know.
There are a lot of scenes where, say, the prosecuting attorney or the defense attorney are delivering long speeches, and Kramer has the camera, circling them.
It's lots of long takes and like visually interesting ways to present what is essentially just people talking to each other for 3 hours.
And like all of Stanley Kramer's movies, it's full of speeches. The ideas are bluntly stated, but I appreciated the movie as sort of a compendium of, what are the problems, what are the challenges, what are the philosophical dilemmas of prosecuting the Nazi atrocities. Mm-hmm. So it's like, to what extent are these defendants, to what extent are they carrying the whole shame of the German nation? Are we prosecuting these defendants for their crimes or for all of the Nazi crimes? And to what extent can you do that? To what extent does German society, to what extent is the rest of Germany as complicit as they are?
Well, they're all complicit. That's what the movie says at the end.
Well, of course, it all crescendos into this point. There's that scene halfway through the movie where they show actual footage of the Nazi death camps, and then the prosecuting attorney or the defense attorney gives this speech where he talks about what a great shame it was, how terrible it was that these atrocities happened in his country. But my defendants had nothing to do with this footage.
They only made the decision that allowed this to go on. They didn't choose to do this. And it's like, yeah, but you're on the top of this chain, right?
Right. And then, we see Spencer Tracy sort of in his nights wandering around Berlin, talking to Marlene Dietrich.
There's one really moving scene where Marlene Dietrich is like, you can't hate, you have to forget. And Spencer Tracy looks around the room at all these Germans laughing and drinking beer, and it's like, yeah.
That was a very Shoah-like moment.
Yeah.
And there are lots of, Germany has some atmosphere in this movie. There are a lot of compelling scenes of him looking at the ruins of this country, and
and he's just an old country lawyer who's never left the United States before.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, because you watched it and I didn't, about Stanley Kramer's other big trial movie, Inherit the Wind, which I think you liked.
Yeah, I like Inherit the Wind.
Yeah.
This completely fictionalized take on the monkey trials that happened between if a teacher could teach Darwin's theory of evolution in class or it should be banned, like it said in the law of where this whole trial is taking place. And Spencer Tracy is the lawyer that comes and defends him. I like that Gene Kelly is I think he's a journalist that hired Spencer Tracy and is just kind of funding all this. And it's again shot in
carpetbagger.
Yes, stark black and white, and all these kind of complicated ideas of, it's not about if I believe in this, it's giving people the opportunity to put it out there. So you're not stepping on anybody's toes.
Okay, so this is what I think Stanley Kramer, when he's at his best, can do. He can aggregate all these different ideas, and the movies are these sort of collections of rhetorical scenes.
But Stanley Kramer has...
they're Socratic dialogues.
Well, he has one distinct point of view that he always reaches in these movies at the end.
Yes.
But he'll give an opportunity to everybody else to kind of vent. Even in Judgment at Nuremberg, the German lawyer goes what about America? You go talk to the people in Japan, and they're complicit in those acts. A lot of whataboutisms that you see a lot these days as well.
What do you know about Stanley Kramer's, I guess, birth as a filmmaker? Because you mentioned that he wanted to he wanted to make small-scale, difficult movies.
When he got back from World War II, he and some of his pals actually started a production company and made movies outside of the kind of factory studio line Hollywood system. And the way they would do it was that they would rent the stages, and then they would shoot their movies very quickly, and then they would release them in theaters. So you wouldn't have to own a studio lot like all of the big places did. And he was an independent operator, and he produced tons of movies. He gave Marlon Brando his first shot. So he did movies like Champion, which is about Kirk Douglas as a boxer, or Home of the Brave, which is about kind of racism in the army. He did like Death of a Salesman, High Noon.
Yeah, he produced High Noon.
Yeah, he produced High Noon. And Kramer talked about that, like, at first it was easier to make these movies, but then other independent producers caught on to what he was doing. So, like, he had to fight with people who just had more money than him. So when he finally transitioned into directing, which is something that he always wanted to do, he said that, like, producing was just a way to directing. It kind of reached a mega production level much faster than you would expect.
I saw one of the quintessential Stanley Kramer movies this week, The Defiant Ones, with Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier from 1958. Of course, we all know this movie, as you mentioned, the inspiration for Fled. Mm-hmm. The movie with the iconic image of the black convict and the white convict handcuffed together, trying to escape, trying to settle their differences. Certainly it is a social issue movie. I liked this movie.
Lean 95 minutes after all the other pictures that you watched.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. And the thing is, it's more than just a message movie. It is a good, like, prison escape thriller. It's loaded with cliches. I'm not sure how many of them were cliches when this movie.
Oh yeah.
But the cliche of, like, they stop at this, like, lonely single woman's house and she's, like, putting the moves on Tony Curtis. But it's quite atmospheric. It's exciting at times. It's full of gargoyle-faced character actors.
You love it!
Including Mr. Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah,
as a man who helps them along the way.
A very rough period from the photo that you sent me.
Looks very bad. And it's, of course, very powerfully acted by Curtis and Poitier. Probably the best I've seen Tony Curtis. Also, unlike some Stanley Kramer movies, it ends, I think, on a more ambiguous note. Typically, Stanley Kramer movies end with Spencer Tracy coming out and summarizing what we've seen and telling us the idea that we're supposed to take away from it. But this one ends, famously, if you've seen I Am Not Your Negro, with Poitier and Curtis trying to jump onto a train that'll take them north, and Poitier holding out his arm, trying to get Curtis, and Curtis is not going to make it, so Poitier jumps off and joins Curtis, and they both get caught. So it's an ambiguous note. I mean, there are some who will read it as, why should this black man have to sacrifice himself on behalf of this reformed white racist, which is a reasonable reading. But, you could also read it as this guy is not able to escape, the shackles, proverbial and literal, of this society, man.
Yeah, I wish Tony Curtis had reached out, grabbed Sidney Poitier, and dragged him to the ground.
Right.
Because that would be more of a head-on symbolistic message.
But, like, it's a more troubling and ambiguous ending than I was used to from Stanley Kramer. Now, we're going to talk about two movies. I think his last two hits, it's fair to say.
Yes.
Because after...
I mean, we're not going to talk about Revolutions Per Minute, his University Uprising film.
Because after 1970, his career, he made a lot of movies.
Hello, fellow kids! That was Stanley Kramer, the director. He tried so hard to make, like, countercultural movies. Like the film about a bunch of hippies trying to save buffaloes, Bless the Beast and Children.
There's one I'm kind of curious about that came out in 1979 called The Runner Stumbles, which 36 people have watched on Letterboxd.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
That's how few people care about Stanley Kramer. Mm-hmm. But it has Dick Van Dyke and Kathleen Quinlan playing a priest and a nun who have a forbidden love.
Good man, Dick Van Dyke.
We all love Dick Van Dyke in one of his rare dramatic roles. So I am curious about that movie.
But instead, we're going to talk about 1963's comedy smorgasbord. It's a mad, 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 mad world.
There are four mads.
There are four. I thought there was three, but you're right. I'm looking at it here. There's four. Yeah. Four is too much. So just like this movie.
Yeah. Let's say you're Mr. Message Man. Mm-hmm. You're the most serious filmmaker in Hollywood, and you want to show him, no, I can laugh too.
I have never had any comedy in my movies up till now.
I'm funny. It's like McBain. Let's get silly.
Yeah. That's the joke. Yep.
So he decides, well, because I'm so important, I'm so serious, I can't just make a comedy. I have to make the comedy.
I'm going to shoot it on 70 millimeter Panavision. We're going to build the Cinerama Dome in LA just to show this movie. That's how big it is. Now, what I found fascinating, but not that surprising, is that you loved this movie as a kid, right, Will?
I did. So my dad is one of many boomers who saw this in first run and had, I guess, fond memories of it. And
not of laughing, I assume.
probably of having a nice afternoon out and seeing big Cinerama images.
Yep.
But yeah, I as a kid, I liked, old comedy guys. So he recommended this movie to me. And yeah, like, I think Joe Dante said that for a kid his age, it was like comedy nirvana. And that's definitely how I felt as an 8-year-old watching this movie. There's so much stuff in it. So many people falling and hitting each other and cars going in the lake.
Well, there's sometimes long gaps between them.
Oh, boy.
But the thing that I love about this movie, I was listening to the commentary track that's on the Criterion, their lovingly restored version, and the original guy that sets off this madcap chase, because everyone here listening to this has seen the episode of The Simpsons that parodies this, is that they think that there's money buried under a giant W.
A big W. It's buried under a big W.
And in the movie, it's Jimmy Durante who crashes his car and tells all these comedy greats that there's money hidden, but in the script, it was supposed to be Buster Keaton. And I heard on the commentary, they were like, yeah, well, the idea was that Buster Keaton was giving it to the next generation of comedians. And I'm like, next generation? They're in their 50s.
I mean, what's so funny about that is I would say everybody in this movie, from top to bottom, by the end of the decade, were irrelevant.
Completely.
Like, all of them.
Yes.
Can you name one? I mean, maybe Jonathan Winters, I don't know.
But if you ask anybody our age any of these names, they will look at you blankly. I mean, maybe you've heard of Milton Berle.
Yeah, but
and a huge unit.
Yeah, Big Dick Berle.
Yeah.
But by 1970, Milton Berle was long past his prime, like all the way down to the cameos. Like,
amazing cameos.
I'll just name some of the lead actors in this movie, which are Milton Berle, Jonathan Winters, Buddy Hackett, Mickey Rooney, Ethel Merman, Phil Silvers, Edie Adams, Terry Thomas, Sid Caesar.
Don't forget Leo Gorcey, our favorite Bowery boy.
Well, okay. Then when you get down to the cameos, you get people like Eddie Rochester Anderson, Peter Falk.
Yeah.
Is that it, strangely?
He has a pretty big role in it, too.
Yeah. Of course, Leo Gorcey, Don Knotts, Jerry Lewis.
Oh, the guy from Zombies on Broadway.
Jack Benny for a couple seconds. The Three Stooges for like 2 seconds.
One shot.
Jerry Lewis has one of the better gags in the movie, I think, running over Spencer Tracy's hat.
And he makes a big face. He's like, whoa.
And these are just some of the names you'll recognize, folks, because there are a lot of people in this movie, like, I don't know, Joey Brown. Zazu Pitts is in this movie. People who are really forgotten today.
Yep. Really forgotten today.
And this is a particularly backwards-looking movie because it's as if Stanley Kramer didn't really keep track of what the developments were in comedy since, the silent era.
So he's like, look, get me all the big comedy stars. It's like that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns wants to build a baseball team. And Smithers is like, they've been dead for decades.
But it's also that... not even the Keystone style. It's like what you think the Keystone style was, which is a lot of car chases, a lot of people falling off things.
Well, you know what? This is a big movie, and that's what I liked about it. It's like big, wide, empty spaces.
Oh man, I mean, I liked looking at this movie, and it's full.
It like takes place in the desert mostly. Everyone's like making like crazy expressions the entire time, but there's not really any jokes in the film.
Yeah, the version we watched is over 3 hours, and I would say, like, in terms of laughs, in terms of, like, really funny stuff, I'd say there's maybe 5 minutes of, like, really top.
I mean, there's a great
stuff.
slapstick sequence fight in a gas station that is, like, the highlight of the movie.
Okay, I'm actually gonna push back on that because I remembered that Jonathan Winters tearing down the gas station as being like one of the funny parts of this movie. Watching it this time, I found it a bit depressing.
Well, here's the fine line between like laughing at something the way the director intended and laughing at the fact that this is what you're seeing on screen and the people think that it's funny. Because that's like all of 1941, which is Steven Spielberg's 1941, which is like Mad World on steroids, where it's like that gas station exploding for 2.5 hours.
Right. I mean, I guess it's sort of funny if you look at it from a slanted angle of look at Jonathan Winters absolutely terrorize poor Arnold Stang.
Just completely wrecking this gas station, which I think they set up like they just opened.
Right. I mean, it's interesting to look at.
Well, every character in this movie is just despicable, and you hate them, and you don't really want to follow them or care about them, because Stanley Kramer, all that matters to him are their personalities as comedians. Like, there's no time taken to, like, set up anybody.
It's supposedly a movie about how greed, rots the soul, but people are pretty rotten from
From the get-go.
minute one.
Yeah.
I guess the scenes of the movie that I find sort of funny are, I like the part where Milton Berle and Terry Thomas are having a fist fight.
Yeah, that's pretty
That
funny.
was funny.
What about at the end where it's like a giant stop-motion ladder that's moving from left to right and throwing people into the air? I assume killing them.
I mean, it's certainly interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Willis O'Brien, who did the special effects on King Kong, did the effects on that scene. I think a lot of the individual performers are clearly, like, really, really working.
Oh, Mickey Rooney is just, like, sweating through the whole film. He's like, "Ah!"
I was watching this great clip of Mickey Rooney at the premiere of the movie, and the premiere is sort of a bit funereal. It's like there's a fly on the wall camera that's just following around Stanley Kramer. He's like, I don't know, I've been on it so long, I don't know if it's funny. I just want to get away from it. And like Mickey Rooney runs in front of the camera and it's like, oh gee, what a swell show, gang.
Jiminy Jillikers.
You know, I think Phil Silvers as the guy who has the car go in the lake, I think he's pretty funny. Just as a presence.
Well, he's the most, like, evil character in the whole film, betraying everybody that comes upon his path.
And, like, there's kind of so much stuff in it, like, particularly around the intermission when it's going back and forth between all these scenes of things exploding.
Can you imagine the audience just, like, stepping out into the lobby during the intermission, being like, oh my god, we have another 2 hours of this.
But man, this movie sure has longers in it. I mean, just a lot of scenes of people at the side of the road.
Well, so the version that Stanley Kramer supposedly preferred was the cut down version, which he said, like, cut down a lot of, like, people entering rooms, leaving rooms, expositions that didn't really matter.
A lot of scenes at police headquarters of Spencer Tracy following these guys.
You know, my issue with it was that I was with it up for like 2 hours, but then I realized that it wasn't going to reach that, like, fever pitch I was hoping it was going to reach.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like, I guess, the films that ripped it off, like Blues Brothers, where, like, cars are crashing all over the place.
Well, you know, I was trying to think, like, the common knock on this movie is that
it's not funny?
Is that it's not funny, and that, like, a big, elaborate, huge budget 3-hour comedy is an oxymoron because, you know, comedy is supposed to be fleet and surprising, and, you know, usually a joke wears out its welcome if it's told too long. I sound like a grand old man of comedy.
That's right.
If it bends, it's funny.
If it breaks, it's not funny.
But I was thinking about the Blues Brothers watching it, and I think one reason why I like the Blues Brothers better than this is because, you know, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi are like these pillars of calm in the middle of the storm, or like Playtime with Jacques Tati. It's like there's a lot of calm in the middle of all the spectacle.
But in It's a Mad World, everybody's crazy, so no one's funny.
Exactly.
That's the big issue. The only thing that's not crazy is the giant cinerama framing of it.
I mean, you can't fault the cinematography, you can't fault the stunts, and you know, I'll always have some affection for this movie.
But this is a film that I think that it was such a big hit because people were happy to see, you know, figures that were on TV all the time, blown up in a way that they had never seen before, like Ethel Merman. It's like, whoa, Broadway's Ethel Merman finally on the big screen.
Wow, Jack Benny up there, 50 foot tall.
Yeah. So, I think that Stanley Kramer's most famous film, though, is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Well, this is a movie that's constantly brought up in the context of just being, like,
lame,
you know, the worst kind of old liberal white guy, like the Green Book of its day.
And it is.
Yeah. It's not very good, folks. It's, I mean, you know the premise. You got Sidney Poitier.
And you got Catherine Houghton, who is just a terrible character in the film. She's the worst. I mean, I had never seen this film, and watching it, I'm like, oh man, I can exactly understand why people gravitated to it as much as they did, in the sense that, like, it's not like Spencer Tracy as the father of this young woman who is 23 in the film and Sidney Poitier is 37. It's like, oh, there's other reasons you shouldn't get married. He's not like, I'm racist and I get one over. He's the liberal parent who is the most liberal man in town, but when he's actually presented with this conflict, that's when he pushes against it.
But you kind of know, like, you know exactly where it's going when you start it, right?
You know, you're right. I am wrong, and I have no more problems with this entire situation.
So it's yeah, just kind of a wildly repetitive movie where these two characters, this young interracial couple in love, come home and everybody keeps having the same kind of awkward conversations for 100 minutes.
I mean, I don't think this marriage is going to last, and I think the young daughter is just doing it to strike back at her parents, marrying Sidney Poitier after being together for 10 days. She's, again, 23.
Now, Sidney Poitier, of course, the couple says that they'll get married no matter what her parents think, but Sidney Poitier, he doesn't actually believe that. He definitely wants Spencer Tracy's unreserved approval.
Yeah, he's looking for a way out of this whole situation.
He wants Katharine Hepburn's unreserved approval, too.
Sidney Poitier says something definitely of its time where it's like, we will have children. It wouldn't be a marriage if we didn't. It's like,
But then Sidney Poitier's parents come for dinner as well, and of course...
I mean, dinner's never had in this movie. I kept waiting for dinner to be had.
It's about to be had, just as it
end credits roll, yeah.
But Sidney Poitier's parents come, and of course they're very disapproving of this too.
Yeah, so both, families.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, Sidney is not groveling to his parents for their approval.
And there isn't one of their friends who's really disapproving, and anyone who shows any kind of disinterest is completely dismissed and we won't talk to you anymore.
But also there's that one scene where Sidney Poitier is lecturing his father, and he says something like, you think of yourself as a colored man, I think of myself as a man. And it's like, yeah, okay, but
it's two white guys talking about this.
But I'm sorry, but the movie doesn't view him as a man.
But that's what I'm saying. That is a line that was written by a white guy.
Yeah. It's like, okay, give me some proof that this movie regards him as more than just a
because it's just othering him. Well, and I mean, it's a classic problem where it's Sidney Poitier, he's one of the good ones because he's the greatest doctor in the world that everybody knows.
And there's also the scene where Catherine Houghton is talking to Katharine Hepburn about it, and she says, I'm sure you're wondering if we've been to bed together. We haven't. He didn't want to.
Yeah.
Because
he's the greatest person ever.
Yeah, he's not defiling her before marriage, And then, of course, after all these conversations are had over and over and over again, finally, Spencer Tracy, the figure of patriarchal authority...
And it all comes down to him.
He has to come in and deliver a 5-minute sermon where he says, well, we've heard all the arguments, and there are arguments on both sides, and they both have their points, but at the end of the day, this couple loves each other, and that's all that matters. Which is okay, I could have predicted that.
Also, Spencer, you're not going to believe that, the next day. Yeah. You're going to wake up and be like, no, I want this thing off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not good.
Spencer Tracy, by the way, died 17 days later.
I like the comment that you made that it's like a Mondo movie watching it, because he's very sick.
Have you ever read Mark Harris's book, Pictures
of course I have,
Revolution? Yeah. Because it chronicles the production of this movie and how basically he was really at death's door making this movie. He could only do a few minutes a day and he would just collapse.
Spencer Tracy was uninsurable, and it was Stanley Kramer that had to step in and said, if the movie slows down or there's any problems, I will pay for it myself.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, the movie was a big hit. Spencer Tracy was nominated for a Supporting Academy Award. And it was a film that was also attacked a lot when it came out. People called Stanley Kramer un-American. They called him all sorts of terrible stuff.
But he probably, I guess he got attacked on all sides because, or from his left and his right. Yeah. Because I know that he felt quite wounded by some of the attacks, saying that the movie was sort of, white liberal hogwash.
It is.
Because he took the movie on a tour of colleges.
9 universities.
He tried to engage with the young uns about
it. Because he wanted to be like Truffaut and Godard, going around, spreading the gospel of change.
Yeah. And, after this movie, it was... I mean, he made more movies, but it was...
Nobody liked him, yeah.
Yeah, time has passed him by. Mm-hmm. And what do you say about the guy? His movies...
Well, you know what? He
monuments.
made a lot of big movies in quick succession, so you got to give him that. Defiant Ones, 1958. Inherit the Wind, 1960. Judgment at Nuremberg, 1961.
Good run.
Yep, It's a Mad World, 1963. Yeah. Wow. Maybe it was just that burst of energy. And he was one of the guys that, you know, he was willing to push forward and do these things. And
he put his money where his mouth was.
Yeah, he just continued to make movies about like the rise of World War II and stuff like that. It's like
he's on campuses.
Yeah, and things that he was just out of touch with. And you know, it's a bummer, but he made movies that will probably continue to be forced upon high school students to this day.
Movies that will remain on lists of movies.
That's right.
And you know, if you take a chance on one or two of them, you might have a good time.
Judgment at Nuremberg, pretty great.
Very good. Yeah.
So check that one out. We interrupt your regular scheduled programming to thank the new Patreon subscribers of the Important Cinema Club, which include Christopher Jones, AJ Serrano, Roy Denboer, Theodore Fox, Liam Rennie, Samuel James Adams, and Matthew Farley. Thank you so much for becoming Patreon subscribers. We couldn't do it without you. I'd also like to remind you to please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every review makes such a big difference and gets the word out there. So if you could just take like 5 minutes to give us a star rating and write a few words, me and Will would really appreciate it. We'd also appreciate it if you followed us on Twitter. You can follow Will at Will Sloan ESQ or me at DeCloux, DECLOUX, and then the letter J. And just sharing the Important Cinema Club on your social media. When you put it out there, even if you don't have that many followers, we could get a new listener, and again, that makes all the difference. I'd also like to note that there's a contest currently going on for Patreon subscribers. If you go to the newest post that was released with this episode, just comment that you'd like to enter the contest, and you'll be entered to win a Godzilla Blu-ray. So just go to patreon.com/theimportantcinemaclub if you're a subscriber already, or become a subscriber and enter the contest. There's a really good chance that you'll probably win. And on the note of Blu-rays, at goldninjavideo.com, there's still Local Legends and Thundering Mantis Blu-rays available, but some of the stuff is going out of print. For example, the Wolf Devil Director, the Pearl Chan collection, is unavailable because we sold out all 200 copies. Now, some of the stuff is still available, so if you're waiting to pull the trigger, now is the time to grab all those Gold Ninja Video releases that you've been kind of eyeing, because it may be too late by the time you finally grab them. Again, that's goldninjavideo.com, where you can find all the available releases. And now, back to our regular scheduled programming.
Justin, do we have any letters this week?
We do have letters. You can send us your questions or comments at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from Andy Bolsover, and he goes, "Hello, Justin and Will. When I was a kid, Teen Wolf was considered a classic on the level of Back to the Future, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Myself and my friends wore out VHS tapes watching the many iconic moments, such as when Michael J. Fox surfs on top of the Styles van to the Beach Boys, brainwashes a guy with his werewolf powers, selling him beer, and dazzles his school with his basketball abilities. Nowadays, Teen Wolf is never talked about. Are we living in some sort of Bernstein Bears-type parallel universe where Teen Wolf didn't have the same colossal cultural impact? It's the only possible explanation I can think of. Please discuss this on your excellent podcast, preferably as a part of a 6-part series on Teen Wolf." Well, on that note, I have to point out, a Teen Wolf Blu-ray came out from Shout Factory last year. There was like a 6-part documentary on it that was 3 hours long.
God.
So the fans are still out there. And with that note, I've never seen Teen Wolf.
I've never seen Teen Wolf either.
I've seen
Patreon
clips
episode?
of it on TBS playing here and there.
I know it only as, just a disembodied signifier.
You don't know it as the pop culture old wives' tale of the guy with his dick out at the end?
No.
You've never heard that story before?
No, what is it?
Is that at the end there's a shot of a crowd and there's a guy that looks like he has like his dick out and he's waving it around?
Oh, it's like how people say there's the Munchkin hanging in the background of Wizard of Oz.
It's pretty clear in the movie, but it's like not quite clear what's going on.
So does he actually have his dick out?
Nah, the documentary supposedly goes into this, and it's like the JFK, like back and to the left.
Right.
And what it's been decided is it's actually his shirt tucked in and pulled in through his zipper.
I mean, it's the last logical explanation, but
Occam's razor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you and I should watch that movie sometime.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Watch Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that gets talked about all the time.
Yeah, but always in kind of a derisive way.
Yeah, jokey way. I mean, I think that the true masterpiece is Teen Wolf 2, where Jason Bateman is a boxing werewolf.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't bring it up, I would have.
Yep. So we shall return to this Teen Wolf conundrum later on. You know what? I just have to say, I'm glad that some stuff like just hasn't continued to just be popular in everyday culture.
Actually, you know what? I agree. I think there are some things like each generation shouldn't be expected to carry everything.
Mad World, just push it away.
Yeah.
Teen Wolf. It's okay that we don't talk. Michael J. Fox is Back to the Future.
Yeah.
He gets one.
Yeah, and it's like some things are good for certain people in their time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about on our Patreon this week, Will?
Well, we are returning to a favorite topic of ours, Matt Farley, the poet of Manchester, New Hampshire.
Now, you brought this up because you wanted to return to it, because I don't have enough Matt Farley in my life for the last few months.
Right. Well, you of course, just put out Local Legends on a beautiful Blu-ray that I've been enjoying. And it kind of sent me on a Matt Farley wormhole. Is that the word I'm looking for? Or rabbit hole?
Rabbit hole is the word you're looking for. Odyssey, if you will.
Yeah, so I'm eager to just have a chat with you about Matt Farley.
Will we be the first podcast to ever talk about a movie that, until I released this Blu-ray, was unreleased? Yes, we will.
Can I just say that I think my proudest accomplishment on the Important Cinema Club is that we've put Matt Farley on the
on the world stage? Is that where you're going?
Well, okay, Matt Farley was on The Tonight Show before us, but I feel like we've got his movies fans.
Yes.
You know?
Even if it's just like 5, that's all that matters. I mean, we've received lots of emails of people saying like, "Oh, you introduced me to Matt Farley. I never heard of him."
I think it's more than 5, too.
Yes.
I think it's somewhere between 5 and 100.
Listen, I'm being humble here.
Yeah.
I'm being anti-Matt Farley. So we're going to talk about Local Legends again, which you revisited.
Yeah.
That movie. And you watched other ones, too. You watched Manch Vegas.
Yeah, and I watched Obtuse Todd.
Yep. That secret movie.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. You can say it. I said it on the episode where we talked about the Blu-ray for the first time. So if you want to listen to the episode, check it out on Patreon. $5 a month. You get that one and all of our back catalog. Patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club. So what are we talking about next week?
Well, speaking of things that, maybe future generations don't need to carry with them, we are talking about the real kings of comedy, Abbott and Costello.
So I have probably only ever seen Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, of course, and maybe like 1 or 2 shorts, and that's it.
Yeah.
I have no other kind of memory of laughing at Abbott and Costello other than that.
I definitely grew up with them. I feel very fondly towards Abbott and Costello. I wouldn't necessarily put them in the pantheon of great comedians or the greatest comedians, I should say. But I think I'm actually interested in exploring that. It's like these journeyman burlesque comics who made it and became icons.
And when Will proposed this topic, I went, "Oh, did you buy that Shout Factory box set? You need to find a reason to watch it."
And yes,
that is correct.
But I also, particularly after this week, after watching Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I want to laugh.
I
want to have fun. So I think we should watch Buck Privates.
Hold That Ghost?
Hold That Ghost.
Frankenstein.
You
don't even need to watch it. You've seen it enough times.
Should we...
avoid Frankenstein?
No. We should do Frankenstein. But I'm wondering, should we do one of the really later ones, Meet the Mummy?
Yeah, we have to. We'll do Meet the Mummy.
Okay.
People like Joe Dante talk that one up to high heaven, but you've seen it recently, and but I'll watch it. So.
I've seen it within the last 5 years.
So maybe it will be a rediscovery now that you're more cosmic brain.
That's right.
All right, so that's what we're doing next week. Until then, my name's Justin DeClue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. Last night, the Laser Blast Film Society, the screening series that is run by me and Peter Kaplowski, had the great honor to do a 35mm screening of a film called Star Kid.
I laugh when I think about it.
What is Star Kid? Well, I had no idea what it was until I was looking years ago at the U of T, University of Toronto print archive collection, and I saw this film and I went, what is this?
Star Kid. I could have told you because I remember when it came out.
Yeah, and when I saw the poster and when Peter was talking about how it haunted him on the back of Disney Adventure, that made me think I must have seen it as well, but just not registered what it was.
It was not a big hit.
No. It opened theatrically.
And probably closed a week later.
But it was a movie that if I had seen it when I was a kid, I would have loved it. Because it had all the stuff that I like. It has monsters. It has a kid hero. It has, people being thrown through buildings, comic books, all this good stuff.
I'll tell the folks the plot of Star Kid, the 1998 classic. It stars, who's the kid from Jurassic Park?
I don't know
Joseph.
His name. Yeah.
Joseph something. Anyway, the kid from Jurassic Park stars as this put-upon kid, just a nerdy, shy little boy who dreams of, having this nice girlfriend, but he's constantly tormented by
the large bully at school.
That's right.
And one night he is trapped at home and his dad has gone to work in the middle of the night.
His dad's a single dad, unfortunately. The mother died, and now he's just basically a latchkey kid.
With his sister, who doesn't want him to ruin her life.
That's right.
A asteroid hits the Earth, or meteorite, I don't remember which one it is, and inside of it is a very well sculpted, especially in the buttocks, alien suit that the boy from Jurassic Park steps into, and now he has a super powerful armor that he spends the entire night, it takes place over one night, just torturing his bullies, trying to figure out how to pee, and finally, obviously, fighting off intergalactic invaders.
Now, this alien suit with the well-sculpted ass, it is its own sentient being.
Yeah, teddy bomb-like, if you will.
It needs somebody to control it, but it also talks, and there are lots of scenes of the kid trying to tell it jokes. It's like Terminator 2, right?
Yeah.
You know.
And it, like, the suit doesn't understand, like, that is not factual.
Hasta la vista, baby. You know.
Yep. At the end, they do, like, a fist bump.
Right.
Yep.
But eventually, the kid needs to help the suit save the universe. Now, had I seen this movie in the 90s, I think I would have looked at some of these special effects and just
dismissed it.
I wouldn't have thought anything of it because all movies look like this.
Now, so if you look on Letterboxd, this movie has like 1.5 stars.
Yeah.
And, you know, going in when
it's not great. I'm just going to say that.
But, you know, I'm going to use the old chestnut of like, movies like this aren't made anymore. Number one, it's super scary. Like, if I had seen this when I was 5, it would have given me like an earnest, scared, stupid style, like, ooh, I do not like this. I mean, while it doesn't kill anybody, which was like the line that like really freaked me out, it is directed by a horror director, so everything is like shot like a horror set piece. Like even the kid in the suit is like always popping out of the dark and like spooking people.
There's a scene in this movie where the kid is in the Star Kid suit and goes to the fairgrounds because he wants to basically stalk the girl that he has a crush on. But he loses control of the suit and the suit starts doing a mass shooting, just firing away at everything. And I don't think anyone dies.
No,
but it's horror. It's a very loaded image today.
I can't control myself.
And then another thing I love, spoiler alert, folks, for the 1998 film Star Kid. At the end of the movie, after the world has been saved, there's some kid at school who's selling Star Kids t-shirts because he's a hero now. But the thing is, nobody sees the Star Kid save the Earth.
Well, they take a photo of him when the Ferris wheel breaks and he catches them.
But do they know that he is the guy who saved the Earth?
No, they don't. They just know it's an alien.
They just know, what they know is that this creature perpetrated a mass shooting at the fairgrounds.
But then saved one of the kids.
But they don't know they saved the Earth. Why would they make shirts about it? Like, that'd be like making an Elliot Rodgers shirt.
Listen, it's a perfectly set up joke. A teen earlier on is saying, oh, all I want to do when I grow up is make t-shirts, and it pays off.
You're right. It's perfect.
But you were saying that like you wouldn't have appreciated it because it's filled with like practical effects. Like the main villain is such a weird design that's filled with spikes. He doesn't have eyes. He has like ears where his eyes should be, and he like uses echolocation, and really grossly all the weapons he pulls off of his body, like it's just like slimy, squishy, like
yeah, very cool costume. I like it.
Yeah, if it had been done now, it would have been like, ugh, super lame CG.
And, you know, even the Star Kid suit, it looks rubbery and tangible, and it's got an ass that you just want to put your hands on.
And when there's action scenes, like the suits are thrown through houses and there's giant explosions.
Lots of sparks.
Yep.
Yeah, so there was much to enjoy. I have an allergy to movies that have prepubescent kids talking all the way through.
Why?
Because they all have like this.
Listen, when you look in the mirror, sometimes you won't like what stares back at you, Will. That doesn't bother me. It's one of those classic 90s movies. It's like, it'll inject like really heavy drama in the middle of a picture where he's like, oh, my mom died of cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, I will show her to you once more.
All family comedies, children's movies from the 90s had either a divorced parent or a widower.
I love movies too where the kids are like in mortal danger, like they will die if like they don't get out of the situation, which is not always the case with animated films, because I'm trying to think of like the last kind of movie like Star Kid that I saw in theater or had been released in theaters, and I can't really think of it off the top of my head.
Wow.
Yep, I mean, it was a golden age, I guess, back then. Stuff like Dinosaur City, Dinotopia.
The Quest for Camelot. I don't know.
Theodore Rex. Well, that one's animated.
Yeah.
So. And, you know, it was great to be able to see it up on the big screen where I can guarantee you we will be the last people to ever watch this print.
And I want to say the U of T Media Commons print of it is beautiful.
Well, it was probably struck, like you said, maybe played once and then was donated to the Media Commons.
Yeah.
Because the studio, I think it was Lionsgate, which was previous distribution companies in Canada before then, they were probably like, we don't want to store this here, you can have it. That's why they get all that weird stuff. But yeah, the U of T Media Commons is not going to let the prints go out anymore. They have like very strict rules now.
Well, they're looking at their policies.
Yes,
right?
because they don't want to lend stuff out.
Right.
They're like, we're an archive. We're not supposed to lend stuff out. And it's like, what? Why do you have these movies?
Oh, tragic.
I know. I mean, I don't want to live in a world where we can't watch Star Kid on 35 millimeter.